I never thought my life would fall apart in such a humiliating way. One evening, I walked into my own living room and saw my husband's hands all over our maid, Amelia. Her blonde hair was tangled, her dress half pulled down, and the look of shock on their faces burned itself into my memory. My heart slammed against my chest as if it wanted to break free. I was 83 years old, and after everything I had given, this was my reward. Betrayal, right inside my own house. I froze in the doorway, the tray of tea I had been carrying crashing to the floor, porcelain shattering into pieces. My husband, William, looked up at me, his lips wet with guilt, but not shame. Amelia, younger than my own grandchildren, tried to cover herself, her face pale and trembling. The only words that came out of me were, "So this is what my childlessness has earned me?" The room went so silent that even the sound of my own breathing felt like a scream. That night, William confessed with no hesitation. He had been with Amelia for months. He said it wasn't about love, but about the one thing I could never give him, a child. My heart cracked into shards when he admitted Amelia was pregnant. Not just pregnant, she was carrying twins. I thought I would faint right there, but something inside me held me upright. Instead of tears, a strange fire filled me. I remember whispering, "Those children will never be born in this house. Not while I'm alive." And from that moment, the battle lines in my family were drawn. My name is Margaret. I am a retired piano teacher, and I've spent my whole life in Boston. People see me as gentle, soft-spoken, maybe even fragile because of my age. But deep inside, I carry a storm. I loved William for more than 60 years. We shared a home, memories, laughter, and yes, heartbreak too. The one heartbreak that never healed was the empty crib in the corner of our bedroom, the one that never got used. I tried everything. Doctors, specialists, prayers whispered in the middle of the night. Nothing worked. My womb stayed silent. William had always told me it was fine, that love was enough, that we had each other. I believed him. Foolishly, I clung to those words. But now, watching him stand by Amelia as if she was his rightful wife, I realized those promises meant nothing. He wanted children, and he had finally found a way to get them, even if it broke me. In the days that followed, my house became a battlefield. William treated Amelia like a queen, making sure she was comfortable, healthy, and safe. He even bought her new clothes, while I was left to watch in silence. And worse, he still smiled at me, still kissed my forehead as if nothing was wrong, as if I should just accept it. One evening, Amelia came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. She placed her hands on her small belly and said softly, "Mrs. Margaret, I hope you'll forgive me one day. This baby, it's William's joy." I dropped the plate I was holding, the shards flying across the tiled floor. My voice came out sharp and cold. "That baby will never see the light of day. Not while I have a say." Her eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. She turned and hurried out, but I knew she would tell William. And she did. That night, William stormed into our bedroom, his voice louder than I had ever heard it. "Margaret, how dare you threaten Amelia? How dare you talk about ending my children before they're even born?" I stood my ground, my frail body trembling but unbroken. "Because they will destroy what's left of us. I will not let you humiliate me further, William. Not with children conceived in betrayal." His face turned red, veins bulging on his neck. He shouted words I never imagined hearing from the man I once loved. "Then maybe you're the one who doesn't belong in this house anymore." The fight shook every wall of our home. For days, William barely spoke to me. He spent all his time with Amelia, while I sat alone in the corner of the living room, listening to my own heartbeat and wondering how 60 years of marriage could collapse in a single moment. But one morning, I overheard them whispering. William was making plans to take Amelia to the doctor. He wanted to protect the pregnancy at all costs. My blood boiled, and something inside me snapped. I made a decision that day. I would put an end to this madness. Those twins would never be born. I didn't care if it meant turning my entire family against me. And when I announced my decision in front of everyone, William, Amelia, even my nieces and nephews who had come to visit. The room exploded. William shouted. Amelia sobbed. My relatives gasped, calling me cruel, heartless, even insane. But I didn't flinch. My voice was steady as I declared, "This pregnancy will be terminated. I swear it on my own name." The room went silent, eyes staring at me in horror. For a moment, I felt like a villain in my own story. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I was simply reclaiming the dignity that betrayal had tried to strip from me. And that's when William's hand slammed against the table, his voice shaking the air. "If you try to touch Amelia or those babies, Margaret, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." That night, I lay awake in bed, the walls echoing with silence. My heart trembled not from fear, but from the storm that was about to break loose. I had no idea how far William would go to protect Amelia and her twins. And I had no idea how far I would go to stop them. The morning after that explosive fight, the air in the house felt heavier than ever. I woke to the sound of muffled voices downstairs. William's deep tone carried a mixture of urgency and anger, while Amelia's soft sobs floated up the staircase like a ghost. My chest tightened. I knew they were plotting something that would leave me powerless if I didn't act quickly. I moved quietly, my slippers sliding against the wooden steps as I leaned closer to hear them. Amelia's words pierced through my heart. "William, she hates me. I can't stay here anymore. What if she really tries something?" And then William's reply, harsh and final. "Don't worry, Amelia. I'll take you somewhere safe. Nobody, not even Margaret, will lay a finger on you or my babies." My babies. The words rang in my head like a curse. After 60 years of marriage, after all the promises we had made, he called those unborn children his babies, as if I had never mattered. I felt my knees weaken, and I clutched the banister for strength. For a moment, I wanted to collapse right there, to give up. But then something snapped in me again.
No.
I couldn't give them that victory. I wouldn't be pushed aside in my own home, not by my husband, not by my maid. I should tell you something about myself. People often underestimate me because of my age. I am 83, blonde hair now silver at the roots, and my body is frail from arthritis. But my mind? My mind is sharp. Years of teaching piano train me to hear every note, every pause, every silence. I can catch the smallest details others miss. And that morning, as I listened to their whispers, I heard every single crack in their voices, every plan they thought they could hide. But it wasn't just betrayal that hurt me, it was the humiliation. I had given William my entire life. I stood by him when he lost his job. I supported him when he was sick. I believed his lies when he told me children weren't everything. And now, he was parading around with Amelia like she was the prize, while I was just the forgotten wife sitting in the corner. It was enough to make anyone snap. At breakfast, I sat at the dining table, forcing my hands not to tremble as I poured tea into my cup. Amelia didn't join us. She stayed upstairs, probably under William's orders. William sat across from me, his face stiff, his eyes avoiding mine. The silence between us was a wall, thick and unbreakable. Finally, I spoke. "So, when are you leaving with her?" His head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" I sipped my tea calmly, though my insides burned. "I heard you. You plan to take her somewhere safe. Go on, William. Take your mistress, take your twins. But don't you dare come back into this house expecting me to smile and serve you." The color drained from his face. He hadn't expected me to overhear. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling the teacups. "Margaret, don't you dare twist this. Amelia and those children are my responsibility now." I leaned forward, meeting his rage with ice in my voice. "And what am I, William? A broken vase you can just throw away?" For the first time, I saw guilt flash in his eyes, but only for a second. It was quickly replaced with defiance. He stood and left the table without another word. That evening, the rancor in our family began to spread. Word had already traveled through the relatives. My nieces and nephews, who once adored me, began calling to scold me. "Anne Margaret, how could you be so cruel?" one of them shouted through the phone. "She's carrying twins." "They're innocent," another cried. They didn't understand. They only saw me as a bitter, childless old woman. They didn't see the humiliation, the betrayal, the years of silent pain. I wasn't fighting against two babies. I was fighting against the destruction of my dignity. But still, their words cut me. Each insult chipped away at my heart. For the first time, I wondered if maybe I was the villain in their eyes. And yet, a voice inside me whispered, "No, Margaret. You are not the villain. You are the wounded wife who refuses to be erased." That night, I sat in my room, staring at an old photograph on my nightstand. It was of me and William on our wedding day, me in my ivory gown, him in his navy suit, smiling with a love I once believed was unshakable. Tears blurred my vision, dripping onto the frame. How had we gone from that moment of pure joy to this battlefield of lies and betrayal? But as I sat there, I realized something. Love had blinded me for too long. It was time to open my eyes. The next morning, William was gone. His car was missing from the driveway. Amelia was nowhere to be seen either. My stomach twisted as fear clawed at me. Where had they gone? What were they planning? Hours later, the phone rang. I answered with a shaky hand, and Amelia's trembling voice filled my ear. "Mrs. Margaret, please don't be angry. William brought me to the clinic today. He said we're going to have the babies no matter what." My breath caught in my throat. My vision blurred with rage. The clinic. He was taking control of everything, leaving me powerless. But then Amelia's voice cracked, almost like she was confessing something. "He said if you try to stop us, he'll make sure you never step foot in this house again." I dropped the phone, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. William was ready to throw me out of my own home, the house I had built with my sweat, my money, my sacrifices. Something inside me snapped once more. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady when I whispered to myself, "No, William. You won't win this war. Not this time." Because at that very moment, I made a decision. If William thought he could erase me, he was gravely mistaken. I had one card left to play. Something he didn't know about. And once I played it, everything would change. My hands shook as I pulled open the bottom drawer of my dresser. It was an old wooden drawer, its edges worn smooth from decades of use. Inside, beneath folded scarves and a stack of yellowing letters, lay the envelope I had been saving for years. The paper was brittle, the ink fading, but its power was as sharp as the day it was signed. It was my name on the deed. This house, the very walls William threatened to cast me out of, wasn't his. It was mine, bought with my inheritance long before his career ever took off. And tucked beside the deed was something else, my will. A will William had no idea I had rewritten. In that will, I had left everything not to him, but to a distant cousin and the local church. William would inherit nothing. I traced my fingers over the papers, my chest tightening. For years, I had hidden them, thinking I'd never need to use them as a weapon. But now, with Amelia carrying twins, with William threatening to erase me, I finally understood. These papers were my shield. And if needed, they would be my sword. Still, doubts gnawed at me. I was old. My body was weak. Did I really have the strength to fight my husband and the gossiping relatives who were already turning against me? Would anyone even stand by my side? But then I thought of Amelia in my kitchen, smugly rubbing her belly, and William's harsh words, "Maybe you're the one who doesn't belong in this house anymore." That single thought hardened me. Yes, I had the strength. I had to. For days, I watched in silence as William moved about the house like a stranger. He avoided me, spending more time with Amelia, driving her to appointments, buying her vitamins, speaking in whispers on the phone. Every time I saw them together, a knife twisted in my chest. He held her arm gently as they walked, the same way he once held mine. He laughed with her in the evenings, a sound I hadn't heard from him in years. And worst of all, he placed his hand on her belly, his eyes shining with pride. That look, that father's joy. It was a look he had never given me. I wanted to scream, to tear everything apart. But instead, I waited. I knew my time would come. The tension reached its breaking point during Sunday dinner. We rarely ate together anymore, but that evening William insisted Amelia join us at the table. I sat at the head, my silver hair pinned neatly, my hands folded on the tablecloth. Amelia sat across from me, her eyes lowered like a child caught stealing candy. William sat between us, playing the peacemaker. Halfway through the meal, William cleared his throat. "Margaret, we need to talk about the future." I placed my fork down. "The future?" His jaw tightened. "Amelia will be moving in permanently. She needs stability. The babies need it too." The room spun. My grip on the edge of the table kept me from collapsing. Permanently? He wanted to replace me in my own house? I forced my voice to stay calm. "So, what happens to me, William? Where do I go while you play husband and father under my roof?" He looked at me, his face hardened, his tone flat. "You can stay, Margaret, but only if you accept them. If you keep making trouble, then maybe it's best if I'll find somewhere else." Amelia's fork clinked against her plate, her lips twitching as if she wanted to smirk, but didn't dare. I sat in silence, staring at them. My entire body trembled, but not from weakness. It was rage. Deep, burning rage. They thought they had won, but they didn't know what I held in my drawer. That night, as William slept soundly beside me, I rose quietly and went back to my dresser. I pulled out the deed again, holding it in the dim glow of my bedside lamp. My reflection in the mirror showed an old woman with tired eyes, but behind them burned a storm. I whispered to myself, "This house is mine, and when the time comes, you'll both learn the truth." But I also knew the fight was just beginning. My relatives were already turning on me, siding with William and Amelia. They saw the twins as a blessing, not a betrayal. And soon, they'd all be here, demanding I step aside. I folded the papers carefully, tucked them back into the envelope, and slid it into my nightgown pocket. From now on, I wouldn't let them out of my sight. The next day, my worst fears began to unfold. My nephew Samuel arrived unannounced, his eyes full of pity and judgment. "Aunt Margaret," he said, sitting across from me in the living room, "I know you're hurt, but Amelia's pregnancy, it's God's gift. Don't fight it. Please. If you keep this up, you'll lose everyone." I stared at him, my heart heavy. Even Samuel, the one who used to visit me every summer, was against me now. "So you'd rather I sit here quietly, watching my husband raise another woman's children under my roof?" I asked, my voice sharp. Samuel shifted uncomfortably. "It's not about right or wrong anymore. It's about family. Don't destroy it." Family. The word tasted bitter. Was I not family too? Or was I just the disposable old wife everyone wanted to shove aside? When Samuel left, I sat alone in the quiet house, my thoughts swirling like a storm. And then I heard it. Laughter. Amelia's laughter, ringing from the garden. I peeked through the curtains and saw her there, sitting on a bench with William, her hand on her belly, his arm draped lovingly over her shoulder. They looked like a picture-perfect family, while I stood hidden in the shadows like an intruder in my own life. My hand tightened on the curtain, the fabric nearly tearing. Enough was enough. I turned away from the window, my mind made up. The time had come to strike back, not with words, but with proof. Proof that this house, this life, was still mine. And as I marched toward my bedroom, the envelope safe in my hand, I whispered, "If they think they can erase me, they're about to learn I am the one holding the pen." The morning sunlight felt like a spotlight of judgment as cars began to pull into the driveway. I watched from the upstairs window, my chest tight, my hands gripping the envelope in my pocket. One by one, my family poured into the house, nephews, nieces, cousins, even in-laws I hadn't seen in years. They carried curious stares, whispering behind cupped hands. I knew why they were here. William had called them, just as I feared. He wanted to make me small, to strip me of dignity in front of the people I once loved. Downstairs, I heard Amelia's nervous voice, then the sound of William's booming laughter. He was in his element, hosting, pretending to be the proud father-to-be. The image made my blood boil. I forced myself to walk down the stairs slowly, my cane tapping against the wood, my silver hair pinned neatly, my chin raised. If this was to be my trial, I would not arrive broken. I would arrive as Margaret, the woman who had fought through decades of silence and pain. When I entered the living room, every eye turned toward me. Amelia sat on the couch, glowing, her belly small but noticeable. William stood behind her, one hand resting possessively on her shoulder, his other hand raised as if commanding the room. "Everyone," he began, his voice strong. "Thank you for coming. I know this is unusual, but I wanted to share something important with all of you." He looked at me briefly, his gaze sharp, then turned back to the family. "As you know, Margaret and I have been married for many years. We've faced struggles, including the heartbreak of being childless. But life has finally given me a blessing." His hand slid down to Amelia's stomach. "Amelia is pregnant. With twins. These children will carry my name, my bloodline, my legacy." The room erupted in applause. My heart pounded so loudly, I could barely hear the noise. Faces I had once trusted now beamed with joy, not for me, but for Amelia. I stood frozen, my cane shaking in my grip. And then came the words that sliced through me like a blade. William cleared his throat again. "From this day forward, I want everyone to accept Amelia not just as our maid, but as part of this family. She will raise these children in my home, under my roof. And I expect no hostility toward her." My breath caught. My home. My roof. As if I were already erased. I wanted to scream, to shout that this house wasn't his to claim. But my voice caught in my throat as my relatives began to murmur. Some congratulated William, patting his back. Others hugged Amelia, calling her brave, calling her blessed. And then, as if humiliation wasn't enough, my niece Clara stood and said, "Aunt Margaret, we hope you'll finally understand. Maybe this is God's way of giving Uncle William the children he deserves." The room turned toward me, dozens of eyes, waiting for me to bless this betrayal. My lips trembled, but I forced them to part. "I will never accept this," I said, my voice sharp as glass. "This is not a blessing. This is a curse, born from betrayal." Gasps filled the room. Amelia buried her face in her hands, fake tears streaming down her cheeks. William's jaw clenched, his hand tightening on her shoulder. And then he delivered the final blow. "If you cannot accept my children, Margaret," he said coldly, "then you are no longer part of this family. You can leave." The room went silent. I felt every eye burn into me. My hands trembled, but I gripped the envelope tighter in my pocket. Leave? From the house I bought? The house I built? No. Not today. I straightened my back, meeting William's glare. Leave? You dare to tell me to leave my own house? His face darkened. "This is my house too, Margaret." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yours? Oh, William, you've forgotten." I pulled the envelope slowly from my pocket, holding it up for all to see. "This house has never been yours. It has always been mine." Murmurs rippled through the family. William's eyes narrowed, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. He hadn't expected this. I pressed the envelope to my chest, my voice steady. "You call everyone here to humiliate me. But today, William, it is you who will be humiliated. Because before this day ends, they will all know the truth." The room buzzed with whispers. Amelia shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between William and me. My relatives leaned forward, curiosity in their eyes. William's voice thundered. "Margaret, don't you dare pull one of your tricks." But I only smiled faintly. "Oh, William, this isn't a trick. This is the truth you've tried to bury." I held the envelope tighter, my heart pounding. Should I open it now, in front of everyone? Or should I wait, let the tension build, make William sweat until he broke? For a moment, the room hung in silence, the air so thick it felt like a storm was about to break. And just as I parted the flap of the envelope, the front door burst open. In walked a man I hadn't seen in decades, my lawyer, Mr. Henry Wallace. Tall, gray-haired, briefcase in hand, his presence commanded immediate attention. "Margaret," he said firmly, "I came as soon as I received your call." The family gasped. William's face drained of color. Amelia clutched her belly in fear. And me? My lips curled into the smallest smile. Because I knew what was about to happen would change everything. The moment Henry's voice echoed through the living room, a heavy silence fell. Even the whispers stopped. All eyes turned toward him as he set his briefcase on the table, his weathered hands clicking the locks open with deliberate slowness. William's face twisted with rage. "Henry, what are you doing here? Nobody invited you." Henry didn't flinch. His sharp gray eyes pinned William in place. "I don't need an invitation. I'm here at Margaret's request. And since this concerns her property and her life's work, you'll sit down and listen." A ripple of gasps filled the room. Some of my relatives exchanged worried glances. Amelia shifted uneasily on the couch, clutching her belly like a shield. William, however, stayed standing, defiance radiating from him. I sat tall, my cane resting against my knee, my hands folded tightly on my lap. My heart hammered, but outwardly I looked calm. After years of humiliation, this was the moment I had been waiting for. Henry pulled out a stack of papers and laid them on the table. "First, let's address the question of ownership. William has been parading around, claiming this house as his, telling Margaret she could leave if she refused to accept Amelia and the children." Murmurs spread through the room again. My niece Clara shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Henry raised the first document. "This is the deed to this house. Purchased 57 years ago. Paid in full by Margaret, using funds she inherited from her late parents. William's name has never been, and will never be, on this deed. This house belongs solely to Margaret." Gasps filled the room. I saw William's jaw clench, so tightly that the veins in his neck bulged. Amelia's eyes widened, her face paling as she realized the man she depended on had no claim to the roof over her head. My relatives turned toward me, shock written on their faces. For decades, they had assumed William was the provider. Now they knew the truth. I was the one who had built this home. William slammed his fist against the table. "This is nonsense. Margaret, why are you doing this? After all we've shared." I finally spoke, my voice calm but laced with steel. "After all we've shared, William? After your betrayal with a girl young enough to be our granddaughter? After you threatened to throw me out of my own home? Don't speak of what we've shared." The room fell silent again. William's face reddened with shame and anger, but he said nothing. Henry cleared his throat and picked up the second stack of papers. "And there's more. Margaret wanted me to update her will years ago, though she kept it private. I think now is the time for the family to know." The room leaned in, every ear straining. My palms grew sweaty, but I didn't flinch. Henry continued, his voice firm. "In this will, Margaret has not left her estate to William. In fact, William has been completely removed. Instead, her estate will be divided between a charitable trust and a distant relative she trusts deeply." The reaction was instant. The room exploded with voices. My nieces and nephews shouted over each other, disbelief painted across their faces. Amelia looked horrified, her lips trembling as she whispered, "But what about the babies?" William turned on me, his eyes wild. "Margaret, you've gone mad. You can't do this. You can't erase me." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not erasing you, William. You erased yourself the day you brought another woman into our home." For a moment, the entire room was chaos. Family members argued, some siding with me, others defending William. The noise grew so loud that my head spun. But through it all, Henry remained calm, his voice cutting through the clamor like a knife. "Enough," he said firmly. "The law is clear. Margaret is the sole owner of this property, and her will is legally binding. William has no authority to bring Amelia into this house, no right to demand Margaret leave, and no claim to her estate." The room fell into stunned silence once more. William looked like a man who had been stripped bare. His fists clenched, his chest heaving. I thought for a moment he might collapse. But then, something darker crossed his face. A shadow. He turned to Amelia, his voice low and harsh. Don't worry. She won't win. Not this time. My heart tightened. That tone. That look in his eyes. I had seen it once before, many years ago, during a fight we never spoke of again. It was the look of a man cornered, desperate, willing to do anything. Amelia's lip quivered as she whispered, William, maybe we should leave. Maybe. But he cut her off, his voice sharp.
No.
We're not leaving. These are my children, and I will protect them at any cost. His words sent a chill through me. Protect them at any cost?
What did he mean by that?
Henry leaned closer to me, his voice low. Margaret, you need to be careful. Men like William, when cornered, they don't think straight. I've seen it before. I nodded, though fear coiled in my chest.
He was right.
William wasn't going to accept defeat quietly, and I had just humiliated him in front of the entire family. This war was far from over. As the relatives began to file out, whispering, casting judgmental looks, William remained in the center of the room, his body stiff, his eyes burning holes into me. And then, as the door closed behind the last guest, he stepped forward, his voice low, almost a growl. You think a piece of paper will save you, Margaret? You think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I tightened my grip on my cane, my heart pounding, because in that moment, I saw something in William the First had never seen before. Not just betrayal, not just pride, but danger. The sound of the doorknob rattling in the middle of the night froze me where I lay. My fingers tightened around the envelope pressed to my chest, my breath shallow, my 83-year-old heart hammering like a drum. I whispered into the darkness, William? The knob twisted slowly, deliberately, before stopping. Silence. Then heavy footsteps retreated down the hallway, their echoes vanishing into the stillness of the house. I stayed awake the rest of the night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was he testing me? Trying to frighten me? Or had he been just one turn away from walking in and taking everything, my papers, my freedom, maybe even my life? By sunrise, I knew one thing for certain. William was no longer the man I had married. He was something else now. Cornered, dangerous, and unpredictable. The next morning, the house felt suffocating. William sat at the dining table, sipping coffee as if nothing had happened. His hair was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled, but his eyes were cold steel. Amelia shuffled in behind him, her hands folded nervously over her stomach. She barely glanced at me as she sat down, but I noticed how pale she looked, how her fingers trembled when she lifted her glass of water. Good morning, William said flatly. Did you sleep well, Margaret? My lips tightened. I didn't answer. He smirked faintly, as if my silence confirmed his power. Amelia shifted uncomfortably, then spoke in a small voice. Maybe we should all try to get along for the sake of the babies. I turned sharply toward her. Don't you dare speak to me about peace, Amelia. You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed my home. Her eyes watered, her lips quivering. For the first time, she looked less like a triumphant mistress and more like a frightened girl caught in a storm she couldn't control. William slammed his cup down, the coffee splashing across the table. Enough, he roared. This constant fighting ends now. Margaret, you will accept Amelia, or you will regret it. His words chilled me, but I forced myself to meet his glare. No, William. I won't accept betrayal dressed as family. And if anyone is going to regret something, it will be you. Later that day, Henry returned to check on me. He urged me to consider leaving the house for a while, staying with a trusted friend or relative until things settled down. But I shook my head. This is my home, Henry. If I leave now, William will take it as a victory. I won't run for my own house. Henry sighed heavily. Then at least keep those documents close. And lock your door at night. As he left, I noticed Amelia standing in the hallway listening. Her eyes darted to the envelope clutched in my hand, then quickly away. I realized then Amelia knew. She knew the papers were the only thing protecting me. And perhaps she was beginning to wonder if they could protect her too. That evening, the storm finally broke. I was in the living room when William stormed in, his face red with rage, his voice thunderous. "Margaret."
Give me the papers. Now.
I stood slowly, my cane steady beneath me. "No, William." He lunged toward me, his hand outstretched. For a moment I thought he would strike me, but then Amelia rushed in, throwing herself between us. "William, stop," she cried, tears streaking down her face. "This isn't right. She's your wife." He pushed her aside roughly, his eyes burning into mine. "She's nothing but an obstacle." My heart pounded as his hand reached toward my pocket, where the envelope was tucked safely. I stumbled backward, clutching it to my chest, my voice shaking but firm. "You touch me, William, and you'll regret it. I swear you will." For a long moment, the three of us stood frozen, me trembling but unbroken, William seething with fury, Amelia sobbing in fear. Finally, William lowered his hand, his voice low and dangerous. "This isn't over, Margaret. Not by a long shot." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Amelia collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't sign up for this," she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't even know anymore." I watched her, my chest tight with a strange mix of anger and pity. She was carrying William's twins, but she was also trapped in his shadow, just like me. For the first time, I wondered, was Amelia my enemy? Or was she, too, a victim of William's madness? That night, I locked my bedroom door and sat on the edge of my bed, the envelope resting in my lap. My mind swirled with questions. Could Amelia turn against William? Could I use her fear to my advantage? Or was she still loyal enough to betray me when it mattered most? As I drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought haunted me. William was planning something. I could feel it in my bones. And when he moved, it wouldn't just be words anymore. It would be something far worse. The smell of smoke clawed at my throat before I even opened my eyes. I bolted upright, coughing, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. The room was hazy, tendrils of smoke curling around the ceiling, slithering toward the door. For a split second, I thought it was a nightmare. But the heat licking at the edges of my blanket told me otherwise. "Fire," I whispered hoarsely. I stumbled out of bed, clutching the envelope tight in my hand, my cane dragging against the floor. My legs shook, my chest heaved, but adrenaline kept me moving. I banged on the door with trembling fists, shouting, "Help! Somebody help me!" But the house was silent. Too silent. And then, through the thick smoke, I heard it. William's voice.
"Come. Low."
Almost satisfied. "It's over, Margaret." I froze, my body pressed against the hot wood of the door. His footsteps echoed down the hall, steady, deliberate. He wasn't rushing to save me. He wasn't panicking.
He was walking away.
Panic surged through me. He was leaving me to burn. I fumbled with the lock, coughing violently, my eyes watering from the sting of smoke. My fingers, weak with age, struggled to twist the knob. But finally, with a desperate shove, the door creaked open, releasing a flood of smoke into the hallway. I staggered forward, clutching the envelope against my chest, my cane tapping frantically as I fought to stay upright. The hallway was darker than usual, the smell of burning stronger near the kitchen. Flames licked at the edges of the wallpaper, devouring it hungrily. "William," I croaked. "What have you done?" But there was no answer, only the crackle of fire. Suddenly, Amelia appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. She rushed toward me, coughing, her hand shaking. "Mrs. Margaret," she cried, her voice breaking. "Come on, we have to get out of here." I clutched her arm, barely able to stand. "He did this," I whispered, my voice ragged. "You're William. He tried to kill me." Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head violently. No, he wouldn't," but her voice lacked conviction. She pulled me toward the stairs, helping me down step by shaky step as the smoke thickened. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, but I refused to let go of the envelope in my hand. It was the only thing keeping me alive, the only proof of my strength. At the bottom of the stairs, flames roared through the kitchen, blocking our exit. Amelia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh God! Oh God! I gripped her arm tighter. The back door. Through the study. She nodded quickly, guiding me through the living room, past the pictures on the walls now blackened by smoke. Every step felt like my last, but Amelia kept me moving, her arm firm around my frail body. We finally reached the study, the door leading to the backyard faintly visible through the haze. Amelia shoved it open, pulling me out into the cool night air. I collapsed onto the grass, coughing violently, my chest heaving. Amelia fell beside me, sobbing uncontrollably. And then, through the smoke and flames, I saw him. William stood inside the living room, silhouetted by the firelight. His face was calm.
Too calm.
He didn't move to escape. He didn't move to help. He just stood there, staring at us through the glass, his expression unreadable. Neighbors soon rushed over, shouting, calling the fire department. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer by the second. Amelia clung to me, trembling, her tears soaking my nightgown. When the firefighters arrived, they forced the door open, dragging William out as the flames threatened to consume the house. He fought them, shouting incoherently, "This is my house. My family. She doesn't belong here." But the firefighters ignored his cries, pulling him into the yard as the flames roared higher. I sat on the grass, the envelope still clutched against my chest, my hair singed, my lungs raw. I looked at William, the man I had loved for 60 years, as he raved like a madman, his eyes wild, his voice hoarse. And for the first time I realized, he was gone. The man I had married no longer existed. Only this desperate, dangerous stranger remained. Later that night, when the fire was finally under control and the house reduced to smoldering ruins, the firefighters approached me with gentle sympathy. "Ma'am, you're lucky to be alive. If you'd stayed in there 5 more minutes." Their words trailed off, but I understood. I had survived, but just barely. Beside me, Amelia sat silently, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly. Her eyes were distant, haunted. Finally, she whispered, I didn't know he was capable of this. I thought he loved me, loved the babies." I turned my gaze toward her, my voice raspy but firm. "Now you see, Amelia. He doesn't love anyone. Not you. Not me. Not even those children." She looked at me, her lips trembling, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her eyes.
Fear. Doubt.
And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of regret. As the night dragged on, I sat in the back of an ambulance, a blanket around my shoulders, the envelope still pressed tightly to my chest. William sat handcuffed nearby, his head bowed, his face grim. But even as the firefighters and police whispered about arson, I knew this wasn't the end. Because as they led him toward the police car, William lifted his head and locked eyes with me. His lips curled into the faintest, most chilling smile. And in that smile, I saw a promise. This war was not over. When I opened my eyes the next morning, I wasn't in my own bed. The walls were different. The air smelled faintly of lavender instead of smoke, and the quilt covering me was knitted, not my usual satin blanket. It took me a moment to remember where I was. My niece Clara had taken me in after the fire. But Clara hadn't spoken much. Her eyes had been sharp, her tone clipped. She had looked at me as though I were the cause of the fire, not the victim. Now, sitting at the foot of my bed, Amelia stared at me with red-rimmed eyes. Her hands were clasped tightly over her belly, her knuckles white. She looked smaller somehow, as if the fire had burned away her arrogance and left only a frightened young woman. Her voice trembled. "Mrs. Margaret, I want to help you. But if I tell you what William is planning, he'll kill me too." My breath caught in my throat. I pushed myself upright, gripping the headboard for balance. "What do you mean, Amelia? What is he planning?" She looked away, her shoulders shaking. "After you showed the papers after Henry came, William lost control. He told me if you didn't hand over the deed willingly, he'd find another way. The fire wasn't just about scaring you. It was a warning. If you keep fighting him, he'll destroy everything. And not just you. My chest tightened. What do you mean, not just me? Tears spilled down her cheeks. He said he'd drag the whole family into it. Anyone who sides with you. He has people, Margaret. People who owe him favors. I frowned, my pulse quickening. What kind of people? She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Men from his old business. People who don't ask questions. He told me if you exposed him, he'd make sure you vanished, and nobody would ever know how. A chill swept through me. William wasn't just desperate. He was dangerous in ways I hadn't even imagined. Before I could respond, Clara walked into the room, carrying a tray of tea. Her lips pressed into a thin line when she saw Amelia sitting there. What is she doing here? Clara snapped. After everything, you still trust her? Amelia shrank back, wiping her eyes. I just wanted to. Leave, Clara interrupted coldly. You've done enough. Amelia stood quickly, her face pale, and slipped out of the room without another word. Clara set the tray down with a sharp clatter. She crossed her arms, glaring at me. And Margaret, everyone is talking. Some of the family says you pushed William too far. That this whole mess is your fault. Do you know how humiliating it is for us? Neighbors asking about the fire, about William being arrested? Her words stung like knives. My own blood, blaming me for surviving. I lifted my chin, though my voice trembled. Clara, your uncle set that fire. He tried to kill me. And you're blaming me? Clara's eyes narrowed. All I'm saying is, maybe if you hadn't fought so hard against Amelia's pregnancy, things wouldn't have gone this far. The betrayal in her words cut deeper than William's threats. Even my family, the people I had fed and clothed when they were children, were turning against me. Later that afternoon, Henry arrived to check on me. His presence was like a lifeline. He listened quietly as I told him about Amelia's confession. His face grew darker with every word. This isn't just a domestic dispute anymore, Henry said firmly. If William really has connections, you're in more danger than I thought. I nodded slowly, the weight of it sinking in. But I won't run, Henry. I can't. If I leave, he wins. Henry sighed heavily, placing a hand on mine. Then you need protection. And we need evidence. Amelia's testimony could help, but she's scared. If she doesn't stand with you, it's your word against his. My stomach twisted. Amelia was caught between fear and survival. But I had seen the cracks in her loyalty to William. Maybe, just maybe, I could use them. That evening, Amelia returned quietly, slipping into the room while Clara was out. She looked over her shoulder nervously, then sat beside me. I told you part of it, she whispered. But there's more. William has been hiding money. A lot of it. He told me if the worst happened, he'd take me and the babies away with that money and disappear. But he also said if you stood in his way, he'd use that money to ruin you. Pay people to smear your name. To make you look insane. My chest burned with anger. He wanted to take everything, my dignity, my name, my home, and leave me with nothing but ashes. I grabbed Amelia's hand, my grip surprisingly strong. Then you have a choice, Amelia. Stay loyal to him, and he'll destroy you too. Or stand with me, and we'll both survive this. Her lips trembled, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked at me with desperation, fear, and something else, hope. But before she could answer, the sound of a car screeched outside the house. Headlights flashed through the window, followed by the slam of a door. Amelia's eyes widened. It's him. My heart pounded as footsteps thundered up the porch steps. Clara's voice rang out from the hall, sharp with surprise. William? What are you doing here? You're not supposed to. But William's voice cut through, low and dangerous. Get out of my way, Clara. I'm here for Margaret. I clutched the envelope tighter, my entire body trembling. Amelia's hand squeezed mine, her face pale with terror. The doorknob rattled violently. William's shadow loomed under the crack of the door. And then his voice came, cold and sharp as a blade. Margaret, open this door. Because if you don't, I swear, you'll regret it for the rest of your short, miserable life. The pounding on the door grew louder, each strike rattling the frame. My frail body shook with every thud, but I sat upright on the bed, gripping the envelope against my chest as though it were a shield. Amelia knelt beside me, trembling, her hands clasped tightly around her swollen belly. Margaret, William bellowed, his voice hoarse with rage. You open this door right now, or I'll break it down. Clara's panicked voice came from the hallway. Uncle William, stop this. You're scaring everyone. But he snarled back, Stay out of this, Clara. This is between me and my wife. The word wife dripped with venom. Not love, not respect, just possession. I whispered to Amelia, my voice low, urgent. This is your chance. Decide who you stand with, him or me. Because when that door opens, there's no turning back. Amelia's wide eyes filled with tears. She nodded faintly, but fear had her frozen in place. The door shuddered violently, and with one final crash, the wood splintered. William burst into the room, his face twisted with fury, his shirt clinging to his sweat-soaked body. His eyes locked on the envelope in my hands. There it is, he hissed. Give it to me. He lunged forward, his shadow swallowing me. Instinctively, I raised my cane, striking him across the shoulder. The crack of wood against flesh echoed through the room. He staggered back, shocked, clutching his arm. Margaret, he roared, his voice trembling with rage. You dare raise your hand to me? Yes, I spat, my voice shaking but fierce. Because I won't let you take what's mine. Amelia rushed between us, her arms outstretched. William, stop. Please. Think about the babies. But William shoved her aside, his strength fueled by madness. She fell to the floor, crying out in pain. My heart lurched, but William didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on me, wild, desperate. He lunged again, his hands clawing for the envelope. I held it tight against my chest, fighting him with every ounce of strength I had left. My cane clattered to the floor as his hands gripped my arms, shaking me violently. Give it to me, Margaret, he screamed. Or I swear. His sentence broke off as Amelia rose behind him, clutching my fallen cane. Her face was pale, her body trembling, but her grip was firm. Leave her alone, she shouted. And before William could react, she swung the cane with all her strength, striking him across the back of the head. The sound was sickening, a dull, heavy crack. William staggered forward, his hands flying to his head, a guttural groan escaping his lips. He collapsed to his knees, dazed, blood trickling from his temple. Amelia dropped the cane, her chest heaving, her hands flying to her mouth. Oh my God! Oh my God! What have I done? I clutched her hand, pulling her close. You chose, Amelia. You finally chose. But it wasn't over. William lifted his head, his eyes glassy but burning with hatred. Blood smeared across his face. He crawled toward me, his voice guttural. You'll regret this, both of you. Fear gripped my chest, but I refused to back away. I raised the envelope high, my voice steady. No, William. This ends now. You don't control me. You don't control this house. And you don't control her. Suddenly, the door burst open again. Henry stormed in, flanked by 2 police officers. They froze at the sight. William on the floor, bloodied and snarling. Amelia trembling, her belly heaving with each breath, me clutching the envelope like a weapon. Arrest him, Henry barked. The officers moved quickly, pulling William to his feet. He thrashed, shouted, cursed, his face twisted into something unrecognizable. You can't do this, he bellowed. I built this family. Those children are mine. She's nothing without me. But the officers held him fast, dragging him toward the hallway. For a moment, I thought it was over. Relief washed through me in shaky waves. Amelia clung to my arm, sobbing, her tears soaking my sleeve. But just as they reached the door, William jerked violently, breaking free of the officer's grip for a split second. He spun around, his eyes blazing, his body trembling with rage. And then, in a voice that cut through the room like a knife, he shouted, "If I can't have this house, if I can't have those children, then none of us will." His hand darted into his jacket and pulled out something that made my blood run cold. The black revolver in William's hand gleamed under the dim light, its cold barrel aimed squarely at my chest. My breath caught, the room spinning around me. At 83, I had faced loss, heartbreak, betrayal, but never had I stared down the face of death quite like this. "William," I whispered, my voice trembling but steady enough to cut through the silence, "don't do this." His eyes burned, wild and unhinged. His face, once the man I had loved for 60 years, was now twisted into something monstrous. "You took everything from me, Margaret," he growled. "My pride, my family, my future. If I can't have it, neither will you." The officers froze, their hands hovering near their belts. Henry's voice was sharp, commanding. "William, put the gun down. Don't make this worse." But William didn't move. His finger hovered near the trigger, his body trembling with rage. Beside me, Amelia gasped, clutching her belly. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "William, stop. Please. You'll kill us all." For a flicker of a second, his eyes softened toward her. But then his gaze snapped back to me. "She poisoned you against me," he snarled at Amelia. "She turned you against me, just like everyone else. If she's gone, you'll understand. You'll see I did this for us." My heart pounded, but I refused to cower. Slowly, I stood, my cane wobbling beneath me, the envelope still clutched in my hand. "Do it then, William," I said, my voice hoarse but unflinching. "Pull the trigger. Kill the woman who gave you 60 years of her life. Kill the woman who stood by you through everything. Go on, show them all who you truly are." The room fell silent. Even the officers held their breath. William's eyes widened, his hand trembling. For the first time, I saw hesitation. Not love, not guilt, just the realization that if he pulled that trigger, there would be no turning back. Then it happened. Amelia moved. Quick, desperate, fearless. She threw herself at William's arm, shoving it upward just as his fingers squeezed the trigger. The gunshot exploded through the room, deafening, the bullet tearing into the ceiling instead of my chest. Plaster rained down, the sound echoing like thunder. The officers lunged forward, tackling William to the ground. The revolver skittered across the floor, sliding beneath the dresser. William screamed, kicking, thrashing, his face red with fury. "You betrayed me," he howled at Amelia as they pinned him down. "You betrayed me." Amelia collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, her body shaking. I staggered back, clutching my chest, my knees buckling beneath me. Henry caught me just in time, steadying me with his strong arms. His voice was low but firm. "It's over, Margaret. He's finished." But as they dragged William out in handcuffs, his bloodied face twisted toward me one last time. His eyes locked onto mine, burning with hate. "This isn't over, Margaret," he spat, his voice hoarse. "You'll die alone. And when you do, nobody will remember you." The door slammed behind him, his words hanging heavy in the air. Silence settled. My body trembled, my lungs raw from smoke, my ears ringing from the gunshot. But I was alive, still standing. I looked down at Amelia, curled on the floor, her tears soaking the carpet. Slowly, I reached out my hand. She looked up at me, her face streaked with mascara, her lips trembling. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know he was like this. I thought he loved me. I thought the babies would make him happy." My chest ached, not with anger, but with something softer.
Pity.
She was young, foolish, manipulated. But now she had seen the truth. I placed my hand on hers, my voice soft but firm. "Then you protect those children. Not for him. For yourself. For their future. And you never let them grow up to be like their father." Her sobs broke into quiet nods, her grip tightening around my hand. Later, When the house finally grew quiet, Henry sat with me. The envelope lay on the table between us, its edges smudged, but its power intact. "You won, Margaret," he said gently. I shook my head slowly.
No, Henry.
I didn't win. I just survived. And sometimes that's enough. I looked out the window, the first light of dawn breaking across the horizon. My home was gone, my marriage destroyed, my family fractured. But I was still here. And as long as I drew breath, William would never erase me. That night, as I sat alone in Clara's guest room, I heard Amelia's soft knock on the door. She stepped inside, her belly round, her eyes still swollen from crying. "I made a decision," she whispered, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "I want you to raise these babies with me. Not as William's children, but as ours. Because you're the only one who truly stood against him." My breath caught. At 83, I had thought motherhood was a dream long lost to me. But now, in the wreckage of betrayal, a new possibility flickered. I stared at Amelia, at her trembling courage, and I realized this war had broken me, but it had also given me something unexpected. A second chance.